We're going to be joined from New York by Anastasia Tonello, president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. But first, let's go to Washington and our senior diplomatic correspondent, Nina Larsen at the State Department. And Nina, we've seen some dramatic gestures by President Trump on immigration heading towards the midterms, but here we're talking about basically changing the Constitution.
That's absolutely right, Kalev. This is referring to the 14th Amendment, which was instilled just after the Civil War in the time of President Lincoln in 1868. So this is a very, very audacious initiative by Donald Trump. He says it's in process. Already we've had Senator Lindsey Graham. He's a very high-profile, very powerful senator on Capitol Hill, saying that he will introduce legislation to try and push this through. But as I'm sure our legal expert is going to detail, he'll have a great deal of resistance here legally.
Anastasia, well, let's get into that and answer that question. From my understanding, amendments to the Constitution cannot be overridden by presidential action. So what exactly are Trump's options, if he actually does want to pursue this option?
So I think I think that what we're talking about this, instead of talking about a lot of things that the president doesn't want us to talk about. He knows that immigration excites his base. He knows that there is this disdain for a lot of undocumented children who are born in America becoming U.S. citizens. So an executive order, he can do that. That will be challenged. I think even if an act of Congress can get through and passed and becomes law, that would also be challenged. I mean, this is a constitutional amendment, something that would require another constitutional amendment to override. Now, whether or not there's some narrow disagreement within the amendment itself, and I think that's what the president and Lindsey Graham are hanging their hat on here, is what would need to be decided if the Supreme Court did take this issue. What does the 14th Amendment actually mean when it says subject to the jurisdiction born in the United States?
I understand that there is some irony here because many Republicans have said they're constitutionalists, that really you should go by the strict letter of the law of the Constitution. The Supreme Court now, we know after the Kavanaugh appointment, a majority conservative Republican appointed court. Would the Supreme Court back President Trump on something like this?
I mean, we put our faith into our checks and balances, and the president has enacted a lot of executive orders. They've seen the Supreme Court has heard these decisions, and some would say, okay, the travel ban that eventually did go into effect, the Supreme Court did uphold it, but on the third reiteration of it, and a very watered down in the president's own words. So if anything could be challenged, if there is any room for executive acts with regard to a constitutional amendment, I do believe the Supreme Court would hear it, and I believe that anything would be very, very limited. I mean, we have a strong Constitution, and the three branches of government work independently and check each other.
Anastasia, this isn't the first time that the notion, the tool of the executive order has come up in this administration, and often as with an element of surprise, sometimes even to President Trump's own party. Can you give us some guidance on sort of Executive Orders 101, in which cases that actually is a relevant possible path for the president to take?
So things that were within the executive, so things like the Department of Homeland Security, that is a department that the president is that heads as the executive of the country. So orders to the departments on how things can be interpreted within the law, within a reasonable understanding of the law. When those type of things are unclear, executive order can clarify that. I mean, we saw President Obama use the executive order. In fact, every president uses executive orders quite successful.
Nina, this is not the only, say, breaking with precedent that President Trump is proposing on immigration. The sending of over 5,000 U.S. troops to that U.S.-Mexican border. This, too, is something that has not been done in the past, the use of military troops there.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that is the current atmosphere here in the United States. Trump is extremely hardline on immigration, as we know. There's still the reverberations of the travel ban that are affecting a lot of people here. And presumably this new action might even affect, for example, children of diplomats that are here long-term, people that are on long-term work visas, studying for PhDs in major institutions here who decide to have children. This is an absolute Pandora's box that President Trump is opening. But, you know, it's a week before the midterms. It's politically motivated, clearly. Yet again, he's appealing to his base voters.
On that, Anastasia, you mentioned before this is sort of being a distraction tool being used by the president ahead of the midterms. Certainly, immigration is a hot-button issue, an issue that he knows works with his base. But this isn't only a distraction technique, because there are actually troops being sent to the border.
Yeah, and I think that when we say, or when I say it's a distraction, it's not to dismiss it. I mean, this is a dangerous distraction. It's a distraction that is bringing about really deep divisions and really difficult issues that our country has dealt with for hundreds of years. So, you know, it's not a distraction in the fact that, you know, let's dismiss it. He's off as nut. There's no way that he can get this done. It's really, I think, indicative of showing the crisis point that we're at here. When I mean, it's very reminiscent of really the civil rights movement, when you have troops coming in to schools, and you see this at the border. You're talking about putting the military in front of children and refugees.
Anastasia, there's also talk of the administration doing away with what's called catch and release, setting up, again, more tent cities for these migrants. Is that something that likely to see the administration do?
In general, I think with regard to deportations and removals, there's not really been a lot of a priority based on who we want to get rid of, who's okay. And so I think that seeing all of these resources be spent on children, on the elderly, on people who are, have U.S. citizen family members and forms of relief, it really goes to show that they're spending a lot of money and resources and time on this, again, questioning, why are we doing this, and how we're dividing the country, and who are we appealing to? It's actually a very difficult situation, and one it cuts to some very deep issues in this country.
Certainly a lot of deep issues being exposed over the last couple of years and even couple of weeks in this country. Anastasia Tonello in New York, Nina Larsen in Washington.